For all of you who even came out early, this is good. This is good. All right, let's open up in a word of prayer, shall we? God, we are so thankful to be here this morning and to be learning and just to be hearing from your word, and also just thinking very practically about how to put these things into use, into action, into practice. And I pray that you would just give us wisdom, give us insight, and help us to connect the dots between what we believe and how we actually live. We love you. We thank you for everything. And it is in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, so this is week 3. This is chapter 3 in the book here. And I've got a couple of just quick announcements. The first thing is we have just a handful of books left. We're trying to reserve those for just people who are actually in here and in the class. We're doing a reorder of them on Monday, so we're kind of out of stock on those at the moment. But I do have, I think, 3 or 4 left, and you can see Miss Amy Shank because she has the final handful of books. So let's get into it. Week chapter 3, and the chapter is entitled "Built for Good Hard Work." Okay, that is what we are built for. Now, right here, when I look at this, there's a massive beast right here. I don't know if you guys noticed, guy. This is. I know probably you think this is Chris Galt. It's not. It's actually Chris Bumstead. Okay. This guy is a 6-time. He's won 6 consecutive back-to-back Mr. Olympia wins in the coveted category of classic physique, okay? So like him and people like Arnold, who's kind of pioneered some of the stuff with, bodybuilding and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, these guys are generational standouts. And of course, it's these guys have a genetic, they've got a genetic gifting that like, I could work out every day. I will never be this guy, okay? There's just no way. However, with any of this stuff, genetics provide the platform, but these guys, they have to be the ones to put in the sweat and the consistency to get where they need to go. So, this might not be where you're going, whether or not this is spiritually being a beast, right? Or physically being a beast so that you can take care of your family, men, right? But the reality is that we have to put in the work that is necessary to get to these places, because you don't achieve these things by just drifting into it or falling into it, right? These guys, like they're in the gym without excuse. They're squeezing out one last rep. They're rehabbing injuries. They're pushing through plateaus. They're waking up sore and working out anyway. They're prepping food, tracking macros. To do something that's truly worthwhile, these 60-minute public wins on stage are built on countless private hours of hard work. And so even though, few in history are going to attain to, like a physique like that, or even like you see some of these like spiritual giants, there might not be a place where we like attain to that, but the reality is that 60-minute public wins were built on countless private hours of hard work. And the reality is you don't drift into doing anything truly good or worthwhile. You have to pursue good works with deliberate intention and steady perseverance, okay? And this is actually going to be hard, okay? Because again, remember what I said last week, the easiest thing that you're going to be doing with your life is wasting it. In order to do something good, you actually have to do the hard work of moving in that direction, okay? So drifting only moves in one direction. And it's so easy to drift, but you only move in one direction when you start drifting. And what is that? It's backward, right? That is you are not going to drift into becoming a better man of God. You are not going to drift into becoming a better husband. You are not going to drift into being physically strong so you can take care of the people around you and so that you can protect the people around you, right? You're not going to drift into being a good mom and building a household that is run well, right? You're not going to drift into any of these good things. What happens if you kind of let your foot off and you start coasting? What ends up happening? You actually start slipping backwards. Unfortunately, there's no neutral. You just literally can't coast in life, in any of these things. If you want to actually truly pursue something good, you have to do it with intentionality. So, I put in here, you'll never drift into godliness, self-discipline, healthy eating habits, wise leadership, mental resilience, physical stamina, or spiritual fortitude. These must be fought for with grit and tenacity, right? You have to actually fight for these things because you don't drift into them. In fact, if you just drifted into those, what's the saying? Everybody would do it, right? I mean, part of the reason why we look at some of these athletes or like people that are doing a craft really well is because you just know there was a lot of work that goes into that. You know, that one catch, it was a lifetime of hard work for that one moment. And the reality is, you have to have grit and resolve and tenacity to actually move in the right direction because you're not going to drift into it. So I'm defining grit as resolved. This is just the Oxford English Dictionary. It's defined as the resolve to do something difficult, to do hard things, hard work, right? So we naturally don't want to do the hard things, right? We look for the easy way out. And, we're often seduced by our flesh, Satan, and the world to avoid pain and discomfort by opting for quicker, easier, resistance-free solutions. Like, we want it to be easy, right? And that's sort of the mental change that we have to go through, which is just to quote Rocky, of course, the training montage in Rocky IV, there's no easy way out. There is no shortcut home. You have to put the work in, and you have to understand that this is going to be tough, okay? Now, once you make that mental switch, things become easier because you stop expecting it to be easy and you start expecting it to be difficult. And then when something actually goes well, you're like, I didn't expect that, right? You are beginning to set your expectations in the right place, and you're beginning to form your world around those expectations, right? I put in here, we want effortless one-pill remedies that'll change everything in an instant, but growth in character is formed the same way muscle is added, by lifting heavy things over and over and over and over again. That's where it happens. So, maturity results from struggle, hard work, and suffering. And the reality is, we don't want to suffer. We don't want it to be hard. I mean, who wants it to be hard work, right? But, if you look at when people think about even something like working out, and I said this a little bit last week, at the beginning, it seems like it's going to be just terrible and it's going to be hard work and you're ripping your muscles and you're going to be sore. Who wants to do that? But here's what ends up happening is you actually begin to love the hard process. And you kind of settle into like, this is going to be difficult and I'm going to do difficult things because the reality is you were actually built for this. And we're going to go into this in a minute here, but you're built for doing this. And the reality is, who wants to break down their muscles and experience fatigue and soreness? Who wants to wade through the sinful attitudes and actions of their family in order to discipline and lead, right? We come home, I don't want to hear kids going at one another. and stuff happening. Like you just want to be like, oh, okay, I'm done, and check out. Don't do it. Do the hard work of getting involved and coming in and working through the issues with them and slowing down and taking the moments to properly help your family, right? Hard work, especially after you've just put in crazy hours, right? This is the process. And the reality is, like, nobody wants this stuff. So the question is, what drives someone to take the hard road and want to do the difficult thing? And, the reality is, it's this. And it's behind all of the stuff that's going on here. God is real, Christ is king, and you were created to do good, hard works. And, the reality is, once you get into this stuff, it feels a little intimidating because there's just so much hard work to do. And I would say, if it does cause you to kind of pump the brakes a little bit and be like, okay, is this really what I want to get into? Again, like I said last week, this is what it is. This is the journey. You got to count that cost, and you got to know whether or not that this is what you are going after. So, a couple of things here that I want you to get into this mentality. This is one of the things that you have to do. One is you have to reject the fear of doing good works. Okay? So, Protestant Reformation of the 16th century returned the church the doctrine of salvation by grace alone, through faith alone, apart from works. And this is most assuredly the right thing. This is, this is true and good. In salvation, the only good works involved are from Christ. So when I'm talking about good works, we have to frame this the right way. Edwards allegedly once quipped, the only thing we contribute to our salvation is the sin that makes it necessary. And that's kind of, it's a little question of like, who said this? So there might be some, but it is a great statement here. Even our best attempts don't get us there, right? We talked through some of that last week. Hebrews chapter 6, verse 1, it says this. It says, therefore, leaving the elementary teaching about Christ, let us press on to maturity, not laying again the foundation of repentance from dead works and of faith toward God. So there is a category called dead works, right? We don't want to drift into doing dead works, but we do want to do good works, okay? So Romans 3:23 says, for we maintain that a man is justified by faith apart from works of the law. Now, modern evangelical Christians standing in the Reformed tradition have protected this particular doctrine with great strength. And I would say yes and amen and absolutely and 100%, and here I stand, I can do no other, right? This is very, very good. However, in our attempt to guard salvation apart from works, we must be careful not to distance ourselves from the call to do good works. Now, people will always say, oh, you're being a legalist, talking about works, doing good works. And I just want to say, no, I reject your category, and what you are saying is not actually biblical, because the Bible says we were created for good works. He made us that way. Right? So in a lot of ways, we as Christians need to completely reject this fear of doing good works. Completely reject it. Though wholly useless, and this is so key, though wholly useless for justification, they are wholly useful to evidence justification and to build God's kingdom. Okay? So if we start rejecting good works, what are we sort of doing as a Christian world, as a Christian body? is we're saying like, well, we don't want to build things. We don't want to actually attempt big things. We don't want to build families. We don't want to build businesses. We don't want to help build anything in this world. And that is completely antithetical to what God has called us to do. He's actually called us to build up ourselves in holiness and faith. He's called us to build up our families. He's called us to build up our church, and he's also called us to build up our world. And so I just want everybody to be like, okay, I'm over this. I'm not going to be afraid of going all in on good works, okay? Now here's the thing. If you have a solid understanding of justification, of what Jesus did to get you there in the first place, you don't have to worry about that, right? Because, listen, there's no way that I'm standing before God on my own. We went through that week 1. But now, right, I want to do what he's called me to do. Full stop. Good works, right? So there is another quote from, again, I think this is Edwards, where he states very poetically here, you can't go to heaven for them, but you can't go to heaven without them. Like they are the natural outflow of a Christian is doing good works, right? So some well-meaning Christians have inadvertently turned good works into a bad word, right? Like as if we should be scared of doing good deeds. And I just want to say, like, this is the function that God has made us for. So in, going all the way back to the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve were given a mandate from God to be fruitful, to multiply, and to subdue the earth. I mean, this was creation order vision for humanity. Now, what ended up happening was sin ends up coming in here. But the reality is before sin, Adam and Eve were made for dominion, for spreading more. And listen, this is what this is. It's spreading more and more of God's glory and making more and more of God's people throughout the earth. This is what man was supposed to do. Spread God's glory throughout the entire earth and make more of God's people that spread God's glory throughout the earth. Through childbearing, right? And let me just say that this is no small thing. So many people, and there's a question on the group chat this week, just even like in terms of moms and like their role with their listen, I'm telling you what, our world is so whacked out when it comes to what their view is of they have such a low view of people in general, and they have no idea the great calling of motherhood. They have no idea what femininity means. They have no idea what masculinity means. They have no idea because their eyes are blinded and because they are serving their own sinful desires and flesh. So they are pushing off the glory that God has given his people to do. And I'm telling you, we need to recapture that and begin to re-elevate this to where it needs to be. This is not just something where, well, I just take care of my family. That's it. Yeah, that is holy, beautiful, and glorious because that's what we were created for. This is part of the creational order, right? And it's evident from Genesis 3 that mandate was not revoked, okay? Only because he didn't say, well, guys, now I've changed my mind. Don't do work and don't spread my glory throughout the earth and don't make babies and subdue the earth. He didn't take that back. What did he say? What's going to happen? It's evident from Genesis 3 that the mandate was not revoked, only that the labor became more burdensome. Okay, it just became really hard. So now his job in the field that was, probably, how enjoyable it is to go out there. I mean, how many of you have a garden, right? It's actually kind of fun to be out there in the garden, isn't it? It's beautiful. It's wonderful. But man, it can get super laborious at certain points, right? Like, you're like, man, the weeds though. Like, they just come out of nowhere. And they just start gobbling up everything. If you ask me, this is just me going out on a limb here, but I think in heaven we're going to be doing some beautiful gardening, but those weeds are just not going to be growing. I think you're still going to be doing beautiful work. It's just going to be different, right? And so in the here and now, we've got to, through the power of God, push back against all the difficulty that is coming at us. You cannot coast. You got to go after it, right? So, for men, the land began to fight back with thorns. And so your job, every single job has thorns. I just want you to know, for some of you guys think, if I go to the next job, if I'm at this job, oh man, I'll be done with that, And then you get to the next job and you realize, guess what? There's thorns, right? Because they're just everywhere. I'm sorry. Now, I'm not saying it's not a good job. It's not a good thing to switch jobs. That's not what I'm saying. What it is wrong to do is to assume that that's where heaven is. That that's where it's going to be. And man, if I could just get there, all of my problems would be gone. No, here's where you got to go for that. Heaven. Right? You got to have that mentality. So the land's going to fight back with thorns. And guess what, ladies? Children are going to be birthed in pain, and they're going to be raised in pain. You're going to get pain all the way around there. It's not just having the kids. But you also birthed out sinners, and they're going to fight. They're going to fight you. They're going to fight Dad. They're going to fight one another. They're going to fight people around them. Conflicts are going to exist because they have little desires that are selfish and self-focused. And then you're going to have to discipline out of them. And then you're going to have to chase them around the house because you can't quite get a hold of them just to give them a nice swat. Speaking maybe from experience, right? Stop being so squirmy so I can, yeah. But they're going to fight you. Everything's going to fight you. Your family's going to fight you. And you have to be working. It's just going to be harder at that point, right? But everything is going to be in that pain. But the reality is that God is still in the business of building a new people, and he's building us to be his church in his world. And the mandate just didn't change because sin entered the picture. It's just going to be hard. And you got to get that in your mind. And guess what? You know what that's also going to do? That's going to make you just sort of excited for heaven. If you're not just a little bit excited to go to heaven, you might not quite understand what's going on here. And probably the older I get, the more I'm like, wow, heaven's going to be awesome. It's going to be so beautiful. But it's good I stay here because I got a lot of work to do, So, the verse that 17 at least of you memorized, Ephesians 2:10 says, we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works. For good works. And I want you to reject that fear of good works because I want you to embrace that you are actually built for good works. And now what you got to try to work through and figure out is, what are those good works that I was created for? That's part of the process. I love this process. This is one of the most fun things ever. So you shouldn't be afraid about talking about good works or thinking about optimizing or doing them in the best possible manner. Best good works you can do. As good as you can do at it, do it. Be the best dad, be the best mom. You just go after it. Be the best student. Right? Just go after it. Go after good stuff. Be a hard worker. The Bible talks about it all throughout the book of Proverbs. What was the verse, Chris? We were reading, this was Proverbs 14, but help me out, in painful labor there is profit. This was Proverbs 14. And we were talking about that this week because 14th we read Proverbs 14. In painful labor, there is profit, right? Yeah, so anyway, at the risk of sounding redundant, I'll just say it again. Good works are, in fact, good. That's what you need to be thinking about. right? Good works are good. So not only do I want you to reject this fear of good works, but also to cultivate a zeal, a full-on affection for doing them and doing them well, okay? Titus 2:14, and I preached a sermon about this, I think last year, but the verse in Titus, it says, who gave himself for us that he might redeem us from all lawlessness and purify a people for himself. Look at that. Purify his people for his own possession, zealous for good works, affectionate for good works. And what I love about, I totally want to, side note, passion and affection are two different things. Passion and emotion are things that come over you. Affection are emotions with will attached to them, okay? So here's the thing, is it's, I love something to the point I'm going to do something about it, okay? So this is like a whole nother thing. We won't go there, but I just want to say it's not about just getting emotion. It's about your affections that set the course and you go after these things. It's being driven by love, not just overcome by emotion, okay? Just a parentheses. We'll talk about that down the road here. So, so cultivating a zeal for good works. And I'll say this, good work is hard work, and godly zeal strengthens our resolve to do good works regardless of the task's difficulty. So what zeal is it's an affection that is driven by volition, like you're choosing to do the good thing. Like, now think about this statement, and I'll just leave this one there. Father, if there's any other way, take this cup. But if not, I'm going. There's maybe a little bit of difference in there between not wanting to do something, maybe an emotion of not wanting to do something, and a volitional affection that is based on love and decides to do the right thing. Right? You see where that there's something in there, and that's a thread that I want to pull on at some point. But let's just go back to this here. And I'm going to run through these very quickly, but Paul expounds on zeal in Titus 3, and he gives us 3 practical ways to approach zeal for good works. And I'll just kind of run through these very quickly. First, he encourages Titus to be ready for every good work. That means that you are to be expectant and you are to be ready for these things, okay? This is not something where it should catch you off guard. Often we miss out on the privilege of doing great works that glorify God for the simple reason that we are not looking and we're not prepared, and we're ultimately what? We're not ready. And so you've got to be ready for the good work so that you can be prepared, so that you can be ready to do it. You know, you're prepped, you're locked and loaded, so you can do the thing, right? Secondly, in this verse, in verse 8, Paul says that we should be intent in leading, intent to lead in good works. And he uses that word intention. Like, again, you can see sort of like the thinking. The thinking is to be prepared, to be intentional with the process. And then thirdly, he actually says in Titus 3:14, learn to lead in good works. And so it's a learning process. So what you have to essentially become is a lifetime learner of how to do gooder works, right? I know it's better, okay, but just throwing it out there. How to do better works, better, good, hard works over time. And that is something that happens as you become a lifelong learner. In sort of closing out this section, I want to read something here because part of what happens is, like, a lot of times people think that good works are just like I'm just being nice, like I'm doing nice things. And doing generally good things. They take it very generally. And let me read this from the book. Many people mistakenly reduce good works to being nice and doing generally good things. However, robust, full-orbed good works are an extension of the creation mandate to develop personal holiness, to build households, to level up skill, to create businesses, to grow churches, to revive nations, and so much more. I think we have had collectively such a small view of good works that we don't realize what we're called to do in the world. And part of that is because we don't realize what we're called to do in the church. And part of that is because we don't know what we're called to do in our families. And part of that is because we're just not the kind of people who are going after that in our own souls. We've bought into just being reactionary, right? We're just reacting to things as they come. No. Not so, says Paul, right, to Titus. He's saying, be intent. Learn to lead in these things, right? Be ready. Be prepared. So if I could say anything to us as a church, we've got to sort of get out of this comfortable spot of drifting and coasting, and we've got to get a plan together, and we've got to go after it. Okay? Because even things like, let's just say, one of the people who you want to become is a man who loves God, right? But you don't have a specific plan of what that guy needs to be and how you're going to get there. This is where we got to go. We got to start asking, okay, not just who do you want to be, but then we have to start asking, well, what does that person do? And then we got to start asking the question, well, how am I going to do that thing to be that guy? And then we got to start asking that question, well, when am I going to do the how of the what to get to the who? Does that make sense? You'll see it as we get into this. So here's what I would like to do. I know that this is now putting this into practice, because if you're with me and you're like, and I hope you are, everybody in this room is like, let's go. Let's do some good works. Let's get in there and do the hard work necessary. I'm excited to do this because I'm telling you what, this is one of the funnest things for me in my entire life to do, is work on this stuff. I have been working on this stuff for years in my own life, and I love it. There's nothing more. I mean, Chris, am I right? We've been on this journey working on this stuff for a while, and it has been one of those things where it's just it is so encouraging to go back and forth with another person who is running in that same direction, who's putting plans in place, who's fixing things and working on things and trying to figure out better ways to do things. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's one of the absolute joys of my life. I get to do that with my family too. So anyway, I want to run you through some stuff in the workbook. And I want to try to I'm going to give some personal examples, because I know this can sound very high level and almost okay, Josh, but where do we begin? How do we do this? And I'm going to try to show you how I've tried to enact this over the last, number of years. And then I'm going to use Amy as another example, and I'm going to put a couple of hers up here, and we're going to work through hers. And then we're going to kind of talk through some things. So in this particular step, it's setting goals that fulfill the responsibilities. So what you're to do to become the person who you are wanting to become, so that when you stand before God, you hear, well done, my good and faithful servant. You took 2, made them 4. You took 5, made them 10. You took 1, made them 2. Whatever it is, right? Steward. You stewarded well. You were a good steward of what I gave you. You grew it. You didn't coast. That's where we're going. That's the who we want to become. And so, So in this particular step, of step 2, the question is, what goals could you set that, if accomplished, would build you into the type of person that you want to become and help others the way that you want to help them? So, defining what that win is to become that person, there's going to be a number of things that you have to do. So I'm going to just fly through this real quickly and just say this. In here, we're talking about goal setting and making a couple of goals to become that person, right? And I've delineated between, and they're not very creative, but big goals and small goals, okay? Big goals, small goals, but regardless, a goal needs to be clear. It needs to be actionable. You need to be able to do it. And it needs to be anchored in reality, okay? Usually when goals go wrong, they go wrong somewhere along those lines. Now, I will even give you, maybe let's say it's 10 years off or 5 years off. I'm okay with those, but they still have to be anchored in reality, okay? You have to look at these things and make sure that you are not making a goal that is completely disconnected from what's even possible, okay? So these goals, the reason I say big goals and small goals is because the big goals are they're going to be more complex and they're going to take a lot more time to execute on, okay? So it will, sometimes these big goals it will take you months to get through them. Sometimes it will be a year. Sometimes it's years to get through some of these things, right? Because they're big. But here's the reality is you got to start working on them and you got to get to the end, okay? So one of my goals was, I'll hit this in a second. But the third thing is anchor your goals in reality. Big and small goals. Okay, so here's where I will kind of get into where I am, and I am just putting this up there just to simply show this is what I've been working on, and I've been working on this list right here. You can go to the next slide. Consistency over intensity. I agree. Next slide. Next slide. Yes, okay, so who? So I've really worked on these statements of mine, and I've been working on them. For me, I've been working on this for years. I've rewritten this thing a million times, and I just want you to know that it's okay that this is a working document, okay? Your who list is a working document, and you need to work on refining this thing over time. Okay, so I'm just giving you the worksheets to get you started. But really, you should start making a thing out of this and reworking what your who list is. For me, I want to be a Christian who knows God and burns with holy affection, okay? It's very specific for me because I'm thinking I don't just want to be somebody who knows about God. I want my loves, my affections to be on fire for Him, okay? So this is very specific for me, right? I also want to be a man who is healthy and strong, okay? Again, I'm never going to be Chris Galt level strong, but I'm going to get somewhere, okay? That's a personal thing of mine. Why do I want to be that? Why do I want to be that? Because my family is counting on me. Okay, I have a church that is counting on me. If I can't do the things because I'm not healthy and strong, and who knows? I can be taken down by a sickness, by this or that, but whatever is within my power, I want to be at the max peak level to be able to serve the people around me. So part of the way that I love you is by eating right and being healthy and going to the gym. So I can be a pastor for a long time and I can run around and I can do the thing, right? There's my thinking. Okay, I'm just giving you what I'm thinking. Third, I want to be a writer who produces top tier content. Now, the reason that's a personal goal for me, because you might be thinking, Josh, shouldn't that go in world, or church or whatever. So for me, the reason why this one's in here for me is because for me, writing is thinking. I learn how to think by putting my words down on paper. It's the reason why I like prayer journals, because a lot of times we just blurt out things to the Lord, and we're not very specific with our repentance. I like a prayer journal because I know for me, writing is thinking. Writing is processing. Writing is getting my ideas together. Writing for me is not something that I'm doing for you or for anybody else. I'm doing it so I can figure out who God is. And I love it. And I would write if I had no audience because it helps me think, okay? So being that those are personal goals, you could take any one of these. Again, and I had a list of probably 30 on here, and I boiled them down to 3. And I pulled all the other ones off, and I said, these are kind of the 3 main things, and if I do these 3 things, I'm probably going to be okay in a lot of the other areas, right? So that's my who. These are the people. I want to be a man who knows God, burns with holy affection, healthy and strong, and who's a good writer, right? So next slide. Family. I want to be a father who shepherds his family well. That's what I want to be. I want to be a good shepherd. I believe that God has first and foremost called me to shepherd my little flock at home. And then, and I want to be a husband who leads with strength and tenderness. And both of those words are very intentional because I want to be a very strong leader, but also not bring strength in where strength is not needed and tenderness is needed, okay? I want to be like a knight, that like they could get in and they could slay an enemy, but they could also be tender with their lady, right? They could, there's this chivalry aspect of it where, I want to be that for my wife. I want to be like somebody who could take down an intruder and who could also take out my love for Valentine's Day, okay? Maybe go see maybe go get some barbecue, maybe take her out for a little gift, something like that. But this is, anyway, keep going. So church, these are my goals. I want to be a pastor who oversees with wisdom and care, right? So I want wisdom. It's part of why I read Proverbs every day because I can't tell you how many people come to, I hear different problems that are going on in marriages or life or children or whatever, and it leads back to the book of Proverbs, okay? So that's why I read it every day, and that's part of the what I would do to get to the who. Does that make sense? So I also want to be a pastor who teaches his people to know, love, and do the words of God. You're seeing maybe do you see like a connection there? Because that's actually what I want for my own life. Make sense? Okay, so keep going. So I'll take the first, this is an extended cut, and I'm just showing you that there are a ton of things on there. Hardworking, disciplined, temperate, joyful, healthy, strong. I mean, there's all of these various things, but the other ones that are in the top level, those are the main things that I want to do. All right, keep going. Okay, so again, this is what you've got to do for each one of your who items. You take this one who item, right, which is a man who is healthy and strong, right, so that I can take care of the people around him. So for me, I got real specific here. And again, this is going to take you a while, maybe even to get to this level of specificity. But for me, here's how I define healthy and strong. I want to be somebody who operates in the top 25% of men his age in health biomarkers, okay? I know listen, you're getting into the weeds here in this head, and you probably don't even want to be there. Drinking lots of water, walks at least 10,000 steps a day, okay? It's about three miles, between 10 to really the 10 to 15,000 steps, 3 to 5 miles a day. It does so much for you. Anyway, this is just where I'm going. Lifts 3 times per week, sticks to a good nutrition plan, okay? Now again, I'm not there's been so many ups and downs, but Pastor Matt has used this illustration, what it is it's like walking up the stairs with a yo-yo. Wasn't that you that said that? Yes, he stole it, but that's that's good. But I always hear him talking about this is what the process is. It's like you're going up, but I don't lift 3 times a week all the time, and I'm struggling to like do the 10,000 steps. And like, I'm working really hard on those biomarkers, and I'm really working hard to stick on my nutrition plan, but it's a hard road. Everything is fighting against you. The sugar is calling me, right? I mean, there's like all the stuff that makes you want to like just cash in on all of those things, right? But I'm working on that. You know, the health biomarkers, like there's this service that you can go and you give like a gallon of blood, and it's called Function Health, and they give you back like, you know, about 200, I believe it's like 200 different biomarkers, and then I'm coming up for my year checkup in like a month, where I'll go back, give another gallon of blood, and see where my biomarkers are, and see whether or not over this past year my health biomarkers have increased, okay? The only reason I'm trying to tell you this is because I want you to get real specific here with like if you want to be a healthy guy, you probably should define what that means, right? Because if you don't get specific with your goals, then you're going to give it a general approach. And I'm trying to be real specific, and I'm trying to be attainable. I mean, I said 25%. That is pushing the level of attainability, I think, in my, I don't know, but that's what we're working on. Okay, so does that make sense, like how these things progress? Next slide. Then what you do is you go back through, and I put a big or a small beside all of these. So big, small for drinking water, big for walking 10,000 steps, big for lifting, B for sticking to a good nutrition plan. Because why? Within each one of these sections, like lifting, okay, what's your actual lifting plan? You know, is it like push, pull, split? Are you doing full body? Is it, you know, like what are we doing here? You know, I mean, it takes a lot of work. How do I use the machines? Where do I go to actually do the workout? I mean, it's just like there's so many things that you've got to think of, and you just got to get rolling, right? What I'm trying to say is like each one of these is going to take time to plan. So sometimes the very first thing you need to start doing is you need to start time blocking about an hour a day just to start saying, what do I even need to plan and work on, right? Like, what do I need to start thinking about how I'm doing these things? Okay, keep going, because we're, yeah, so that was mine, okay? Does that make sense? Like how the who leads to the what, and we're trying to get real specific with those goals and figure out then the next step is we're going to start breaking down those goals into actionable components. So my lovely wife, I just took a sampling of hers, okay? Now, for her, you know, we'll just say a sampling might be a woman who pursues knowing God well. She wants to know God well, right? Not just, you know, like, again, be specific with these things. She wants to be a wife who supports her husband, right? And I would say, well, I'll read the last one. And again, her list was like probably 30 long as well, you know, because she's very detailed as well, like of all the different things. And if you only like could come up with one or two, I hope even like in this, you can start thinking, oh, there's a whole bunch of things, and I'm gonna even post the full extended lists on some of this stuff in the group chat, so you can get even a greater picture of like all of the possibilities of things that you could do. The other one was a mom who travels to new places with her family. Okay, now you might think that that's like it's like, you know, in the secular world, it would be like, I want to be a traveler, someone who sees the world, right? But what this is you've got to tie this back to the who you want to become, so when you're standing before God. But there's something that both of us kind of know in that, is that when we take family trips together, what happens? Our family gets very close together. We're just with each other. We can kind of break out of the world and just spend a very focused amount of time together. It's beautiful for growth. It really does help your family. Now, doesn't mean, you know, yeah, so like that is a thing. Do it. You know, find things like that, put that in there, but make sure you're tying them back to the purpose of why you're doing what you're doing and tie that back to standing before God and giving an account for how you're managing your family, right? Now, that, I just wanted to take like a unique sort of edge case, which would be a mom who travels to new places with her family, okay? Go to the next slide. So if the who is a mom who travels to new places with her family, like what does a mom have to do in order to become that person who is a traveler and who is bringing her family to these different and new places? Well, I threw these ones up there. Maybe first one is plans a trip to Paris. Okay, now you might think I know you're probably thinking I've lost my mind on this, but just go with me. I just want you to see this example. Or plans a trip to Punderson Winter Chalet. How many of you have ever been up to Punderson? Okay, a handful of you. You should check it out. It's actually really cool. It's like 50 minutes away from here. They've got like tubing, and it's just a wonderful like place to take your family. And you know, it's a great weekend trip, or Friday or Saturday, right? Now, with those two things, again, some of those things are what? Big? Like one of these, like planning a trip to Paris is very different from planning a trip to Punderson, right? But there is still some things to do to plan a trip to Punderson. Like let's just say you want to find some local things to do. You have to set up, like you actually have to have some time in your schedule to research local things, or you have to have a system that when you come across local things, you can put it in your filing system. So then when you get back to that point where you're planning, you're like, it's easy for you. You got 10 places to go. If you want to get the family out and get them, have them spending time together, right? So the small thing could be like planning this small trip, whereas planning a trip to Paris is actually going to be a much more monumental task, right? And so that's why we're labeling it like big and small. And you can kind of see, because once we get to the next step, then we're going to start breaking some of that stuff down even further. So next slide. If you are going on a trip to Paris, think about this. This is all the massive amount of work that goes behind it, okay? It's not just like, oh, let's go to Paris. Let's go. Let's just go right now. Let's get because like you probably don't even have a passport. You know what I mean? You can't even get out of the country because you haven't got a passport. And then you're going to be like, I need to get a passport, but I got to get a photo for that thing. Where do I get a photo? And then you're calling around, oh, FedEx. Okay, FedEx. I go in, they're busy. Come back at 1. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, there's just like so much stuff that goes into the things. And maybe this is the thing, but you're going to have to start researching locations of like what to do when you're there. I mean, or you could just wing the whole thing, right? You could just wing life, okay? And there's some of you who are like, yeah, I'll just wing it, Like, listen, this is like what we're trying to do is we're trying to do good works, okay? Prepared works, intentional works. And here's the deal. If you just do this, if you do the preparation and the consistency over time, what happens is you don't get put in a place where it's like you're 2 weeks out and you're like, well, I haven't figured out about a passport yet. Okay, and then you realize that now you're going to have to spend more money to get your passport expedited, and you just lost your family $250. Congratulations, right? Great planning. Be zealous for good works. Just saying. I'm just trying to, like, this is the reality of this stuff. But if you have, like, small time blocks in your schedule where you're just, like, picking on this consistently and not just trying to come in and get it all done at once. Anyway. Point that I'm making is there's a whole thing about choosing dates, right? Calendaring is a bear with people these days, right? I mean, it's like trying to figure out when this is open or when people can do this or how, like this person's, well, we can't go this date because there's a game. We can't go this date because there's this, right? I mean, it's calendaring, it's a lot of work. We're just getting into the real everyday nitty-gritty parts of life. You also have to create an itinerary. Where you're going to go when you get there. Right? Then the next section is you got to make reservations. Then you got to pack for the trip. Then you got to get ready to go. And you see all of this does what? It takes a lot of what? Work. Hard work. And what I want to say is it's worth it for these things. This is why I want you to do a brain dump of all of those things. And this is why you got to go back through and start saying, what are the most important things? What are the most important things? And then power rank those as to what you're going to start first, right? Because this stuff, it actually does take a while to start putting in practice. And yes, maybe I'm going overboard on the biomarkers thing, okay? But at least I'm trying the thing. I'm trying to do it. I'm trying to be specific on it. Maybe that's not it for you. I don't know. But the point that I'm making with all of this stuff is we just have to get very specific on these things, and we've got to put a process in place, or else all it is wishful thinking. How many people have thought, I would love to go to Paris? Think about it. How many people are like, du Paris, I want to go to Paris? And then the question is, who's put the work in to get there? Because you're not going to drift to Paris, right? You don't get to the moon with a dream. You get to the moon with a dream and a space program. You don't get to Paris with a dream. You get to Paris with a dream and a plan. And then dad's got to go make some money so that you can get there as well. So dad's got to bring home the bacon. Again, this could be a 3 to 5 year plan. But just think, what if you started putting in a half hour a week planning this for the next 5 years, and then in 5 years, you've put money aside consistently for 5 years, and in 5 years, you take the whole family to Paris. And because you're a dad who loves his family, who wants to teach his family, when we're in Paris, what are we doing? Okay, one of the things we're doing is we're going to visit some Reformation sites, because turns out Strasbourg, France, this is one of the key cities in the Protestant movement very early, with Reformation ideas established by 1521. Butzer led the Reformation here, and Calvin lived in Strasbourg. Let's go to Strasbourg and talk about Calvin, young ducklings, right? Or maybe as pastor dad, we go just across the border and we go into Geneva, Switzerland, because we're there, because we've planned this thing out in advance. And what's in Geneva? Geneva is the epicenter of the Reformed tradition where John Calvin spent most of his ministry. And maybe we just open up and on the trip because whenever we go on a trip, I do a themed devotion for the trip, okay? And every time, at least once a day when we're eating, guess what we're doing? We're doing a devotion on the trip, right? Because I want everybody to be locked into the Lord, and this is a beautiful time. This is like mini camp for my kids. I'm taking them on camp, and I am your camp counselor, and I am the camp speaker, and your mom is the camp counselor, and we're going to have an awesome time, right? And I'm going to lock in. So maybe when we go on this Paris trip and we just go over the border to Geneva, maybe we're gonna pull out Calvin's little booklet, the golden booklet on the Christian life, and we're gonna go through that for 10 days. And my kids are going to actually stand in the places where some of these men have given their lives for the Lord, and we're going to talk about what it means to actually give your life for something that is greater than you, namely His glory, and we're going to do all of the hard work necessary to get there. Maybe that's what we do. But see, maybe that's going to take 5 years to plan. Are you okay with that? That's the question. So this is what we're doing here. We're actually trying to say, who do we want to become? And then we're trying to work backwards to actually put a plan in place. Because if it doesn't get into your calendar, and if it doesn't start getting into a plan, then all of these things that you would love to do in terms of good works, they are nothing but wishful thinking. And I know that as Paul told Titus, I want you to excel at these good works. Right, I want you to learn to lead in them. It's going to be learning. You're going to have to, it's a lot of preparation. It's a lot of work. But the good thing is the work has glorious payoffs. It It really does. And so I'm really excited to help you guys. We're doing this together, by the way. Like, this is a lifelong journey for me. And I just want you to know, like, I have been racking my brain for a while of like how to do this well. And I am not there by any stretch of the imagination. But I am putting in some work, okay? And I want to ask you to join me. And as you know, like let's jump in on this and let's go after the Lord together, and let's pursue these good hard works as a church family. So, couple of things as we leave here. I will say I want to try to help you put these into practice much more specifically as we go throughout these weeks. And so if you have an example of like, hey, here's one of those things, here's who I want to be, I want you to drop that into the group chat for the class. And I will go down through there, and I'm going to try to pull some of these out. I'm going to make a master list of those, and I'm going to try to pull all of those out. Now, I probably gave you way more questions than I gave you answers for today. And I know that there's a lot of questions on this. So if you have other questions, again, please utilize the app for questions, because I'm banking all of these questions, and I want to answer all of them, okay? I really do. I want to get through all of these questions, and I want to help everybody in the however we can. So put those questions there, and or write them on a piece of paper and come give them to me, and then I'll take a photo, and it'll send to my email, which I will check on Monday, which will go in the list, because I have a process for that. Okay. Anyway, I think that's all we got. That's week three. So. Thank you guys for being here. Let me close in prayer, and then we'll be done. God, thank you so much for this day. I pray that we would be a church who really lives out grit and does hard things and does hard work for you and for you alone, for your glory. And we love you. We thank you for everything. And it's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.